Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. We'd like to talk about the Green Finance Dialogue 2021. In my midst is Rainer Exter, the board member for Adelphi, and he's joining us right now to briefly tell us more about the Green Finance Dialogue set for the 9th of December. That is Thursday this very week. Look out for that at the Kampala Sheraton Hotel in the Brigade. Very good morning, Rainer.
Very good morning.
Thank you for joining us. 9th December isn't too far. It's only Thursday.
It's only Thursday, yeah, and
the Green Finance Dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. So what we want to do, we want to talk. We had the same event last year where we talked about green finance, and it has moved even further center stage than it was last year. The whole topic of green finance. There is a huge amount of money internationally, but also growingly nationally, which wants to invest in green, and these investors, they're looking for investment opportunity.
I see.
And at the same time, you have small and medium-sized enterprises.
Indeed.
And you just talked about it with Pavlos before, with Contact, which lack finance. So this green finance money is a great opportunity for these SMEs to get finance. And we want to talk about that on Thursday.
Indeed. Let's not lose the viewer for a second. Let's first explain to them what is green financing so that they get on board.
Green finance is basically all finance which is investing in topics which has an additional impact. So looking at additional impact in terms of environmental benefits, biodiversity benefits, or greenhouse gas mitigation. Greenhouse gas mitigation means less CO2 emissions, basically.
So meaning if your business will go a long way in not only amassing wealth for yourself, but also being cognizant of the fact that we have climate change, and it has to be, environmentally friendly. And you'll be financing such projects because they are environmentally friendly.
Exactly. I think there's a mixture, or there's two topics here. Like one is existing enterprise with a standard business model, and they go more green. And what we're focusing on here in Uganda is actually business models which have an inherently positive impact on the environment.
Indeed.
So we call them eco-inclusive, we call them climate inclusive. So looking to find, and I'll probably give an example, that might be the easiest way.
Indeed.
Look at, I think here in Kampala you see lots of waste management trucks driving around.
Indeed.
And this is a green enterprise. Or you look at the beekeeping was talked about before. This is a green enterprise. Or you look at ecotourism, which is green enterprises. And they have an inherently positive impact on the environment. So if they grow, there's more positive impact on the environment.
Indeed. And that's why we are calling for financing of these green projects. Also, why is green financing so important?
It's important because it's an opportunity, I would say.
I see.
Because so far we had a conversation that SMEs always have problems getting finance.
All right.
Now there is a huge interest in finance green topics. And investors want to get an additional positive benefit out of it. They want to have an additional impact with what the money which they do, which they use. So they're looking for financial returns, but at the same time they also look for additional returns. And just to give you an example, if you look at countries like Germany, for example, what you find is that investors, if there is a bond, a green bond being put out, it's sometimes 6-7 times oversubscribed. So it's really, really popular with the investors to put money into it. Now is the issue where to put this money the green bond has accumulated. And there, countries like Uganda, where there is a very lively entrepreneurship scene, is of course a great way to do it and to put it there.
So who are you targeting at this year's Green Finance Dialogue? What is the format, Rainer?
It's going to be pretty interactive, I would say. So it's going to be a dialogue between different actors, and the main actors are the ones from the financial industry.
I see.
So we're looking for financial industry actors who also need to have a conversation, because
these are the banks.
These are the banks, basically, mostly banks. If you look at a bank's business model, financial instruments, they all have been invented sometime in the 1700s by the Medici in Italy, and since then not much has changed. I don't think very much is going to change either way. That's fine. But what you need to attach to that is like ways how to generate also green impact with these business models which are already there. And we need to have a conversation with banks about it. And there's a huge interest, and we work in 40 countries worldwide, and we see in every country we see growing interest in these topics from the financial industries.
Rainer, what are some of the challenges dampening the resolve of some SMEs to make that shift to green economies or green projects, if you will?
We don't see really an issue having the green SMEs. Like at the moment we work with 120 SMEs here in Uganda and growing. And we've been working here for more than 10 years. And we used to work with, at the start we worked with 2.
Yeah.
Now it's 120. And that's the 2 are not counted. It's not accumulated. It's currently working with.
I see.
And so there's a supply of SMEs, but more are needed. So if you're out there, you want to start a green enterprise, go for it. And then come to us at the Uganda Green Enterprise Finance Accelerator to apply. But I think in terms of the, it's more an issue that the banks have to adjust their products to accommodate these enterprises as well, so they can get financing and they can scale their impact.
Have you noticed any resistance coming in from some, jurisdictions, especially here in Africa? What I do know is for the European countries, for the first world countries, it's been easier for them to implement the green strategy. But for African countries, it's even hard for us to get off the fossil fuels. You know how tough it is. Talk to me about the resistance.
I think I would beg to differ.
You do have a president who is saying, well, Africa accounts, for the lowest carbon emissions. Out of the 33 billion tons of carbon emissions being remitted, he says Africa only accounts for 5%. Why should we veer off the fossil fuels? So there is largely that resistance from some African jurisdictions to make that complete shift to green energy, maybe to green economies, if you will. So the resistance, how dire is it?
I don't see it very dire, even from the, I don't see it from the Ugandan government. I think with the green growth strategies you have in place here, there's parallel conversations happening.
I see.
Of course, I think there's some resistance towards changing everything and throwing overboard everything you have.
Oh, yeah.
But what you grow new and what is newly developed, then can be green, and I think that's also the strategy of the Ugandan government from what I read.
I see.
So I think I don't think there's that much resistance. If you think about, I think there's more opportunity here in all the African countries we are working in. It's and especially in Uganda, there's a huge interest in doing that.
I see.
So you need growth, you want jobs, and if you want jobs and need growth, take green jobs because, and that's one of the reasons, there is also huge interest from investors, nationally, internationally, from donors to invest in these jobs. So I think I don't see a big resistance.
You don't see any resistance. Indeed. So talk to us how we can ensure the growth of green growth right here in Uganda.
I think by having a combination of non-financial support for such enterprises moving this direction, with financial support, and that in between you have to put something which I usually call financial facilitation mechanisms.
I see.
Which are using free money, grant money, national, international, and assisting enterprises to get financing from financial institutions.
What about a mindset shift, Rainer? Should we also talk about that? For people who have resisted to make that shift? Maybe a sensitization campaign to talk to some of these SMEs that are still stagnant in the old way of doing things.
I don't really believe so, to be honest.
Indeed.
No, I think like the mind shift is already happening. Like we used to be, with the topics of sustainability, it used to be on the fringes. And now it's center stage. It's center stage in the international conversation. I think it's also partly center stage in the Ugandan conversation here. So I don't see that there is a huge need for a drastic mind shift there. I think now it's a question how to change the system and to be a little bit, you just talked about some conflict before.
Indeed.
I like to say there is a battle going on if this is the topic, and this is being fought on mind shift. But what we are out now there is to organize the peace.
Indeed.
And I think like I'm in the organizing the peace business.
Indeed, right.
In terms of don't need to fight the battles. Do we need fossil fuels? How much of it? I think like that's a shift which is already happening.
Indeed.
But now we have to show the opportunities and to show how the peace can be organized. Yeah. And that has to be done by green enterprises.
Because according to the research we've done as Morning at NTV Rainer, we did discover that 90% of the small and medium-sized enterprises that you are targeting in this country are in the make up the private sector, and most of these businesses are informal, meaning many of the business owners or proprietors are actually illiterate. They do not have, a lot of information. They are not, technologically savvy in that they can't, get on a gadget, maybe an iPad, and see what is happening in the US, and maybe read an article on green financing. These are largely people who do not operate online. That's why we were talking about the importance of going out there and reaching out to these people who are semi-illiterate in the informal sector. Don't you think this would be a good idea, rather than assuming that they have the information because it's out there?
I don't assume that. No, I don't assume they have the information. Yes. What they need is good non-financial support. But they don't need good non-financial support only on the green topic. They need the green topic to be integrated in receiving support so they can grow their business. They can stabilize and make their business more resilient. And that's what we're doing with this combination of in the UGEFA Green Enterprise Accelerator. We are supporting them non-financially and financially. So the combination is the key. And so I think, and the business is the key. The key is not green, the key is enterprise. And then you have the green, which is built into the business model.
Meaning even though your business was never green to begin with, you can just incorporate the green factor in it. That's what you're trying to tell us.
No, that's basically what we call cleaner production. You can do that as well, but what we are doing is that you have a business model which inherently is green. So if you look at it, if you
completely green.
Yeah, if you're not completely green, but if you grow the business, then it has more positive green impact.
I see.
And if you grow a normal business, you try to do less harm. So like doing more good compared to doing less harm.
Are there examples of SMEs, Rainer, that are exercising green growth in this country?
There's certainly great examples. I don't want to give a specific example because everybody talks about these nice examples and nice stories. And I've been in this sector for 15 years now and I have heard a lot of nice stories. I can also tell you a lot, but I would like to focus more on the ideas and the models behind it. So basically, if you have an enterprise, for example, doing plastic waste upcycling, that's inherently a green enterprise. If you have a charcoal business, which is also popular in Uganda, right? Then you have usually inherently green enterprise if you have the right fuel source. So I think that's the combination we are looking at.
Indeed. 5 years from now, Rainer, where do you see an economy like Uganda? Do you see us taking that, complete shift to a green economy?
I don't think in 5 years' time, but there's certainly a direction going. And I would expect that the green share of the economy has accelerated 2, 3, 4 times in 5 years.
I see. What will it take for us to get there?
It will take a good combination, like I just re-emphasized that, of non-financial support and financial support, and having these financial facilitation mechanisms in the middle.
I see.
And I don't know 100% how they're going to look like. We're trying out one now, but I think there needs to be other ideas. So they can be scaled and accelerated, because now we talk about 100 enterprises supported, thousands need to come, tens of thousands need to come. So it's a question where to find ways to grow. And that's why I think the financial sector at the Green Finance Dialogue Forum is important, because they are the ones who know scale.
Because we are talking about 2 million SMEs. Of course, that is a huge crowd of people you can actually tap into.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Rainer Exter. He is a board member for Adelphi. Thank you very much for your time. Look out for the Green Finance Dialogue 2021 at the Kampala Sheraton Hotel on the 9th of December. It's Thursday this very week. Another break is in the offing. We'll return shortly. Keep it here.
Watching Morning at NTV.
Uganda has one of the youngest populations in the world, with 78% being under 30 years of age. The country has also been hit by shocking numbers of teenage pregnancies, especially during the lockdown brought about by the pandemic. Experts warned that these were majorly because of lack of access to sexual reproductive health information and services. Reproductive Health Uganda, RHU, has developed an artificial intelligence AI chatbot that works with Facebook Messenger to close down on the knowledge gap. Join us this Monday at 11 a.m. as we unveil how technology is set to change the situation in the country. Under the theme, Reaching Young People with SRHR Information Through Innovative Technology, and the panelists include Fortunate Gagumaho, Communications Coordinator, RHU, Daisy Kandole, Youth Assistant, RHU.
Uganda discovered commercially viable oil deposits in the Albertine Graben region. Since the discovery, hopes to end poverty and live a better life among many Ugandans were further ignited. Government has been undertaking key infrastructure developments to transition from the exploration and development to the production phase of oil. Across the eco-route, PAPs are concerned that compensation for their land has taken so long.
Mwaka 2018 ne bachamukiriza abantu nange nga mwendi ne bachamukiriza Mujja kufuna sente mujja gweddalu naye abaaca mukenyo ebitooke ne babisigula naye tumaze emyaka 3 batadde ku waiting.
Nze ndowooza nti baagadde nga nze bwenkuze ne mukazi wange ono tufe tuveewo bintu bazibaani omuntu muwandiike ateekeko omukono omu kyomulowoozamu naye nze njagala kasente kadde nkalye.
The Civic Response on Environment and Development, CRED, and its partners will keep at the forefront to advocate for the respect and protection of fundamental rights of the eco-project affected persons.
Do not suffer in silence. Voice your concern at whatever stage you are.
All right, a very good morning once again, and many thanks for keeping it here on the #1 platform, that is Morning at NTV. Yes, we operate Monday to Friday, and this platform is geared towards acquainting you with that information that you need to conquer your day, conquer your week, vis-a-vis conquer your career. So this opportune moment, my comrade Martin Nsubuga, the Chief Executive Officer for the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, is already here to talk about a lot that is happening, that has been happening among the coffers of the regulator since 2011, if I'm not mistaken. You did have the Act taking center stage in 2010. Indeed, operations have been very, very smooth for the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority. But we want to know, what do the recent amendments to the NSSF Amendment Bill mean for the regulator? Martin Nsubuga is joining me right now. A very good morning.
Good morning.
Indeed, let's just get straight to the point. This is not the first time you've been here on Morning at NTV. It's always a pleasure having you on this platform, Martin. Let's talk about the recent developments. NSSF Amendment Bill. We are now allowing midterm access 20% and some 50% for people with disabilities, and a lot has been happening. In 2020, we did reach out to you, and you said it was going to be bad news to allow access to this money. Are you still, holding the same stand?
Yes, from the technical point of view, I still maintain that position. It was not a good move for purposes of not only the sector, but the bigger intention.
What was your argument back then?
The argument then was that when you are saving for this money, it's for your retirement, not for emergency, not for any eventualities. And remember, the amounts you save are not that substantial, so the idea would have been, can we encourage people to save more? It was an opportunity, and it's still an opportunity for us to educate our population to save more, to create other pots for saving. But nonetheless, now that that has passed, I think we need to begin to think about what does that mean
for the people out there.
For the people out there. Now, if that opportunity is exercised by everybody, it has a risk to the member, especially the one who has some years retirement. Remember, they're talking of 45 years and 10 years of saving. And normally, the retirement age under NSSF is 55 years, which could go even to 60, depending on how long you want to save your money. But that means that you're losing that opportunity to grow your portfolio. Yeah, you've drawn it down, and you're losing out on that.
Meaning when you retire at 60 or 55, we are going to give you little money.
Definitely.
At the end of the day.
It will be little money, but not only being little money because it would have been reduced by the drawdown, but would have lost the opportunity of gaining on the compound interest. And that's where the benefit is.
And people forget there is life after retirement. From the age of 60, you might survive all the way to the age of 90. Those are 30 years. And you're surviving on a small portion of the retirement.
Exactly. And even, you've rightly stated it, people may live longer in retirement than they are living in their working life.
Indeed.
So the risk is that as you think about drawing down this money, just be mindful of the decision you are making. If you are going to draw this money for purposes of consumption, I think twice. If I were you, I would, and I really need this money, don't exercise the entire 20%. Exercise a small portion of that. But then, if you want to go and invest, don't test an investment you've not done before. I think the sector provides the highest returns to date, an average of 11% in this market. So what investment are you going to put your money in? That first will give you the assurance of protection of your money. Somebody is doing the investment for you. And number two, there is an assured return of more than 10% annually. So you are going to get the money, get involved in the business, to do it yourself, yet you are still having other demands on yourself. So what is going to happen? You are going to waste this money, it will be lost. And at the end of the day, we are going into that stage of people who have worked handsomely with so many years, and they are going to run into old age poverty in retirement. That's the risk I see.
Indeed.
That's why I'm cautioning, don't get excited. Even the opportunity is there to get the money. Don't just exercise it.
Indeed.
Just apportion it and manage it. However, it's also an opportunity for us from the sector perspective. Two things. One, you know, there's this comfort of is our money there? Is our money safe?
Yes, Martin.
It's also an opportunity to test that our money is actually there.
Indeed.
Yes.
Mostly for these people clamoring for the meter maxes, I think that was the main goal, to see to it, is our money still there?
It is there. It is there. And that's why
people are scared.
That's which is actually the largest population. And that's what is dictating your mindset. I think don't fully exercise the entire amount.
Indeed.
I see a situation where people are going to draw down the money, and then next week they say, can I deposit this money back?
I see.
That one is likely to happen. Yeah.
Go ahead. We are talking about what is going to culminate out of the passing of the NSSF amendment bill. Your oversight powers were also reduced. We do have a finance ministry that is actually taking that role in investment, and then labor, social and development that are taking the other part of the social security. Where do you fall as UBRA right now?
Yes, first and foremost, we've been overseeing the governance sector. The governance of any scheme, that will still remain. In order to operate in this market, you have to be licensed. That has to remain. Now, what they're focusing on more, although in the bill it to be more on the investment function.
I see.
That has been in place. The only distinction here is that the law seems to have empowered more of NSSF to do the inside investment on their own. The UBRA Act ideally promoted the segregated functionality where you seed the function of investment. Of course, the argument then was that if you are investing in government securities, which is the case today,
Indeed.
75% I think of the NSSF portfolio,
the bonds and so forth,
government securities, then you need a fund manager. I would buy that one very well. But ideally, that's not the long-term objective.
Indeed, Martin.
And they invent the other investment vehicles you want to adopt on. You want to say that you are going to do it in-house. How are you going to manage things of conflict of interest, a dictation of how decisions are going to be made?
If we are to invest in other spheres other than the government securities.
Yes. That's where the risk is going to be. But
I see.
That's something we need now to look into quickly as regulators, to come up with a clear framework that will oversee that process. We've already figured out how we are going to deal with it in purposes of enhancing that function to the level of the statutory requirements of a fund manager, and subsequently meet all the licensing requirements. Not that we are going to license that function, but they have to meet all the nitty-gritty required to operate as a fund manager. But there are also other things the bill is bringing about.
Like
the issue basically of expanding coverage in terms of reaching out to some areas that have been a limit because of the current NSSF Act, where it is looking at 5 employees, it is etc. that has been dealt with. It will allow them to operate and expand coverage to other areas. The only issue is the separation. Remember, NSSF is a member-driven fund, and they're using members' funds to mobilize expansion of coverage. That is something that has to be dealt with. My interest as a member of NSSF is a return and income. Okay? Now, the other agenda for expanding to more members,
yes, Mr. Nsobuga,
is now a drive of another entity. Me, I'm more interested. Is my funds protected?
Oh, yeah.
Am I given an earning? Am I assured of the cash flow? Now, but now in the operation of going into the voluntary window, you have to clearly separate the functionalities, especially when you are going to use monies to drive the growth, to drive the mobilization, to drive the membership.
Of course, it's been 10 years since this act, the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority Act, was enacted. That is around 2010. We want to know what has been achieved since then, especially given the fact that before that, we didn't even have a regulator for this field. We did not have one.
Yes.
You did have URA having its own retirement benefit scheme. You did have the Army having its own. You did have National Water having its own. Everyone had their own. So savers couldn't be protected in that regard. That's when you came in. Talk to us about that and how you did fill that void and the work you've been doing for the last decade.
Correct. We're established by an act of 2011. Actual operations actually started in 2012. And my board chairman, Mr. Kase, was only given an act.
I see.
Please go and establish. So where we are today is the result of the very effective board.
Indeed.
We've been able to put structures in place, a very robust system that has helped to put structures in terms of legal regulation and guideline to guide the sector. We've enhanced governance because we cannot talk of growth in this sector without understanding where we are coming from.
Indeed.
We had a poor governance structure, mismanagement of funds,
Yes.
poor investment decisions, poor records, no information to members. That has been dealt with. We have a clear governance structure that is established by an act, and subsequently a system that establishes who is supposed to be a board member. Fit and proper proficiency test. Number 2, how to keep records of a member, who is supposed to be a member, what kind of disclosure information is supposed to be provided to each of the member, and subsequent to the regulator. A standard format of clear representing the accounts and all those the disclosure requirements. Now we go into the operations. There's a clear functionality, how funds should be invested, how books of accounts should be dealt with, who is the fund manager, who is the custodian, who is an administrator. All that has been put in place. Now we see trust that has been developed.
Indeed.
We can see more membership. We could also see a growth in the portfolio.
More schemes springing up.
More schemes. We have now around 66 schemes, including NSSF. In the
That is 67.
In the past, you actually talked of, you only talked of the Army, the only 3.
Yeah.
You are talking of 67.
Without
So
a
that's big
regulator.
number. Now, the portfolio has grown to almost 18 trillion to date. NSSF accounts for, I think, 15.56 trillion. So there is another arm that was not known before that is also growing steadily and very, very fast.
Indeed.
Now, beyond that, we could see investments in other asset classes that were not known before. Whereas they invest in government securities, providing support to economic development, there are also other unknown asset classes that were not looked into at that point in time. We see the growth in the quoted equities, but also there's a growth in unquoted equities. There's also clear decision making on investment. The concentration then was in real estate, that is brick and mortar, that was the mirror of the assets of the fund. Now it is more than that. And then there's growth in understanding this sector, not only the sector of the regulator. When we talk about retirement now, people are beginning to appreciate this is a long-term investment vehicle. We need to invest now for the future. And the agitation, when you compare the notes of before, then and now, there's a smooth growth. And besides that, we've been able to address a number of complaints, unsettled issues, unlimited contributions, unpaid benefits, a number of those. And besides that, we can consistently say that the sector has grown. I think the fastest growing sector at around 18% for the last 6 years.
The fastest growing indeed.
Besides, it has continued to give assurance to its members of returns of more than 10% annually, I think for the last 6 years. Not only within NSSF, but all the schemes around. So they're assured of growth, they're assured of returns, they're assured of protection of their funds. The regulator
I'm sure you've grown tremendously from 5 trillion Uganda shillings in 2014 to all the way to 17.9 trillion Uganda shillings. That is quite a lot of money. But then with the fracas going on with the NSSF, UBRA, then the Ministry of Finance, one would make it look like UBRA is doing nothing, but largely you are doing the most in that regard. So talk to us about the worst case scenario of some of the challenges that would befall this nation if you did not exist.
Well, if we didn't exist, then we would see things of poor investment decisions, money being invested in east, west, and center, all sorts of things. But besides that, there wouldn't be any governing structure of these schemes. Like in the past it were. no decision making. That is loss of focus, direction, and subsequently anybody would be a board member to a trust fund.
I see.
And subsequently all monies can, I mean, there would be a lot of leakages in the funds, because you cannot just spend in this sector. You see a lot of leakages, wastage of funds, and then returns would go down. At the end of the day, loss of value.
And some of the challenges that have dogged this sector include expenditure on the operations. Is it a big problem, and how dire is it?
Yes.
The overall expenditure.
It was
I'm
a
here,
big
it's too
problem.
much.
When you look at the numbers before, it was around over 5% of the 4% of the entire assets were going into expenditures.
Operations.
Today we are talking of around 1.3%, from 5 to 1.3.
Indeed.
On average. But what was the money used for in that period in time? Excess payment to the fiduciaries, to the governance, excessive travels by the trustees and board of directors, investments that were not detailed expenditure costs that are not disclosed.
Yes.
We employed a lawyer, we employed a valuer, all those were leakages.
Indeed.
Excess resources were going there. Now we unpack. When you are going to buy a land or to invest into a fixed asset, we say, can you unpack all those costs?
Indeed.
Then you see all these disclosures coming up in place. Then people begin to realize, no, you cannot just say, we paid the lawyer so much exorbitantly, we paid the surveyor, there's this land broker, etc. All that is now going down.
I see.
And we see standardized operations. Besides, they use to be exorbitant costs for those who used to employ service providers. But you see now the operational costs that go to the service providers, these are the custodians, fund managers, and the rest, have really gone down substantially. Because the regulator has really held control over this. You cannot just overcharge. You need to justify.
Based on what you're telling us, Mr. Nsubuga Martin, it looks really that Ubra has been doing a lot of good work. But then the president recently directed the NSSF to stop paying you a levy of 7 billion Uganda shillings annually. Am I right? Now, he actually did say we should stop it, but was it justified? What is the levy all about? What were you using the money for?
Well, first and foremost, I don't want to risk to go against the president. But the fact is,
I know.
When this money, first, we've not got a formal communication to that effect as a sector regulator. So we read it in the papers.
Just
and
like
we are waiting to get there. But nonetheless, I think we need to provide some clarification here.
Indeed.
These monies were never appropriated at source. We are on a collection agency. When this money came, it was remitted directly to the consolidated fund, period. And our budget was always appropriated by Parliament, would go and defend it, and then given resources to operate. So now that that may not happen, what it means is that the amount that is going into the government revenue is going to reduce by that amount, because it was not actually money that is coming to Ubra. No, it was going to the consolidated fund. So as we think of mobilizing revenue for this country to support economic growth, I think there is that window that has been closed.
So that will affect your operations as we move forward?
Not as much, because we are getting our resources from the consolidated fund through appropriation.
Meaning when you got the 7 billion from NSSF, you'd send it directly to the consolidated fund, and then that money is appropriated from the consolidated fund back to you.
Now, money is fungible. When it goes into the consolidated fund, you cannot say what came into is what you are giving to Ubra. No. It's like a person paying taxes. You pay into the coffers, and then you are given an allocation. So we are more the collection agents. So
were you also receiving money from the other schemes? The 66 other schemes?
Of course. And once that one is passed, it cannot be seen to be limiting it to only NSSF. It has to cut across. Yeah, you cannot say one agency pays, another agency does not pay. You cannot apply a law selectively. It has to cut across.
You have a viewer who is watching Morning on NTV and wondering, why is it that the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority only focuses on the NSSF?
It's a very interesting question.
Yes.
First, it's not correct that we focus on NSSF.
Yes, Martin.
However, any prudent regulator will focus on the
biggest
largest entity that
Yes.
has a huge risk to the sector. But by and large, you put standards that which scheme is supposed to play with. We've put demands and subsequently put measures in place to ensure that all sectors comply. But nonetheless, because of the nature of the scheme of NSSF, it is large, it accommodates a huge portfolio, and if it went, and it's a huge risk to this country. So any prudent regulator, focus on it, follow up on each of the investments they do, step by step, demand more disclosures, demand for more information, and subsequently continue to enforce compliance. Otherwise, I think it's also to their advantage, because you cannot say I'm a fund and I don't have anybody to oversee me. Where do you get the confidence of your members and trust?
Indeed.
Somebody has to be there to oversee and say, yes, there's somebody in charge here who looks at even who goes into there as a board member, who goes through the process. Investments are done prudently, somebody is checking on them, financials reflect the true position, indeed somebody has verified them and can attest to that, and operations are clearly segregated. All that process has to be looked into clearly.
All right, that is Martin Nsibuga, the Chief Executive Officer for the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority. Thank you very much for having made the time to speak to us on this beautiful Monday.
Thank you so much.
And indeed, looking forward to our next encounter.
Please.
As usual, it's always a pleasure.
And it's a pleasure.
Regards to everyone at Ubra.
I will.
Indeed, that is